Realize what made it kind of confusing last week. The chronology, the workflow for making this stuff work, live stream work. And I'm sure there's a better way of doing this too. If you're listening to this later on, you're like, well, why are you doing it this way? Please let me know. I go and set up the live stream in YouTube, and then I tweet and share and do whatever else with the URL, make up something I'll talk about, and then go to OBS, and I get OBS to start broadcasting to that YouTube stream, because I've done the whole key sharing magic thing with OBS. And normally YouTube has the video of whatever is actually happening here delayed like 10 seconds. And then when you're ready, you press go live. But it's just started showing the thumbnail. Last week it did that, and then this morning it did this too, which confused me. So you see nothing moving, but it's like ready to go live. You're like, okay, what am I going to be broadcasting? I'm going to be broadcasting a static thumbnail. I don't know. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's get straight into sponsor, and then I'll get into some other stuff and why I'm rushing a little bit today. Sponsor probably needs no introduction, but let's do it anyway because that's how they work. Sponsorships. How sponsorships work. 1Password is today's sponsor, this week's sponsor for the gazillionth time. 1Password extended access management, securing every sign-in for every app on every device. Now, interestingly, and I do need to have a chat to the folks about this, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that sponsorship link, and we set all these up, probably early this year, is now redirecting through to Trellica by Password. Now, Trellica was actually an acquisition from 1Password earlier this year that is feeding into that extended access management pipeline. Discover SaaS applications, automate lifecycle management, and optimize SaaS spend. All the sorts of things that if you are in, I guess, similar roles to what I was in my previous life, it seems very, very relevant. Security gaps from form shadow IT. So what's the time? It's like 6 a.m. It's Saturday morning. I'm doing this a day late. I'm tired. Security gaps from shadow IT. The shadow IT, going on a tangent now, they always make up content. The shadow IT that I remember from my days at Pfizer, 14 years at Pfizer, what it always looked like is someone else would make an access database. There'd be some business requirement, some business need somewhere. And then someone would solve it with an access database, which, okay, well, full marks for ingenuity. Now we've got yet another place with customer, possibly patient data floating around, and we would look after it. Organizations are actually closing that gap and finding where the shadow IT is and where all the other bits of important corporate information is sitting is a big problem. It's a hard one. All right. Well, it doesn't seem like it's been such a bad time to do this because there's lots of people here, which is good. I was, of course, I would normally do this on a Friday, which it might be for some of you. It is now 6 a.m. Saturday, tomorrow, for some of you. We went away for a couple of days. Now, I posted a little video on X yesterday morning of where we were. Went away somewhere very tranquil here, not too far away, because I had to get out of the house because of renovations. I am losing my freaking mind about tradespeople in the house. Now, many of you probably work from home. Many of you probably work from the office or have done so at some point in time. And imagine you've gone into the office and you're there doing your job. And then there's constantly someone like ringing the doorbell or constantly someone coming into the house or constantly conversation. I think as I drove out of the house expeditiously on Wednesday morning, it was like a hammer drill or something like that. It is doing my head in. And it's nearly done, but everything's always late. And I don't think anyone has ever done any sort of renovation project or house build project where stuff has not been over time and over budget. And that's exactly where we are. So I've not been having fun with it. What I have been having fun with related to that is putting Shelleys in walls and joining up more and more lights to the home automation. Shelleys have actually been super solid lately, which is good. So all of that is looking nice. I'm going to share some stuff around that once eventually at some point in time this gets done. Next week when I do this video, I'm going to be in Singapore, and I'll talk then, I think, about the talks that I'm doing in Singapore, because it's tangential but very different to all the stuff I normally do. But that will give us a good solid break from being around people in the house, and hopefully we come back and it won't be done. I had this debate with Charlotte the whole time. When's it done? Oh, it'll be done Tuesday. Oh, okay. So no one's coming in after Tuesday. No. If anyone comes back, can I tell them to go away? Well, no, you can't do that because they might need to come in to finish something. Well, it's not done. That's not how done works. L. Tate loves the hat. The hat is there because what's underneath is not presentable. That's literally why. I also have the Haverbane Pone merch is still on there. Merch store is going well. We've added a few things, a few different bits and pieces people wanted. If you see something at merch.haverbanepone.com that you'd like that's not there, let us know and we'll add it, because it's Fourth Wall is the company that runs that merch store for us, and they've been awesome. So anything that you want is kind of on there, and we just need to enable it and then drop a PNG on it with the logo, and we're done. Right, we do have some data breaches today. Where do we begin with this? Allianz Life. Oh, no, see, that's the link through to... I just started typing Allianz Life, and I got allianzlife.kroll.com. Now, Kroll is doing the identity protection or the identity monitoring, because Allianz, as is typical for breached organizations in this industry, after they get pwned, they go, okay, here's identity monitoring. I think for how long? Is a couple of years. We have secured the services of Kroll to provide identity monitoring at no cost to you for 2 years. Kroll's a global leader in mitigation, etc., etc., etc. Activate now. Adult activate now. Minor activate now. Anyway, let's go to the Allianz Life story. So it looks like Allianz Life have had their Salesforce instance accessed. They made mention somewhere in their communication of a social engineering attack. I think there's an attribution there to Scattered Spider as well. And we've seen, even from our own Australian Signals Directorate, guidance recently on the TTPs of this group, and largely involving social engineering, which I think is fascinating that we're here in 2025 with all of these technology controls, all these security controls, and you've still got kids, very often kids, or very, very young adults, just managing to convince service desk operators, for example, to do things that they shouldn't do. And the fascinating thing, like, how big is Allianz? Like, what? I could find out. As an organization, how big is the company? No, let's do Allianz as a whole. This is Allianz Life, which seems to be Allianz Life Insurance in the US. So that's obviously a much more niche thing, but still a big market. How big is the company Allianz? How long do you go in a day without actually doing something AI related? Asking a question. Employs 156,000 people. They have revenue of 180 billion euros. That is wild. So 156,000 people, revenue of $180 billion, and some kids with good social engineering skills breach you. Like, I still find that fascinating. Now, I find it fascinating the leverage that the bad guys get, but I also find it fascinating the leverage that you as individuals can get in this industry. I mean, look at Haverbane Pone, the ability to create something like that reaches so many people on an absolute shoestring is wild. I just think it's a cool industry. I'm excited by it. All right, let's have a look at what was in this Allianz data breach situation. The data was extensive in columns, but most of them null. Put it that way. And incidentally, this data circulated quite broadly, very quickly. I'm absolutely confident that Allianz knows that it is in many, many, many hands. 1.1 million unique email addresses. Now, I did see the headlines were all around. Let's actually open up the story here. They're all around like 2.8 million. As I said the other day, this must have been about the what do we call them? The data troll stealer logs. Taking a headline of how big a data breach and distilling it down into actual impact is quite a different thing. And in the data troll situation, it was like, what was it, 16 billion records or something like that. And then you're like, okay, yeah, but a record is an email address and a password and a website when it's actually just a clean, sensible record and it's not junk. And then that's replicated many times over in the one file, and that's replicated between files. And then if you want to distill it down to actual impacted people, then it comes down to a much smaller number. And of the 2.8 billion something rows rather that were sent to me out of that corpus, there was, I think, 109 million actual people impacted by that. So it's like roughly 1/2,000th of the headline. Not that big a multiplier here. So 2.8 million records from the Allianz incident, 1.1 million unique email addresses. I noticed after it went into Have I Been Pwned, there was quite a bit of press because it went into Have I Been Pwned and quoting that 1.1 number. Now, just to be clear, there could be more than 1.1 million people impacted by this because some records don't have an email address, but that's kind of like the primary key to a person, isn't it? It's the best way we've got of quantifying the impact. So there could be more than that. The other thing is, there's one data breach I won't get into, that was a while ago, where I quoted a number of email addresses, and the company was then very much like, oh, well, that's just the number of email addresses. Some people have more than one. I don't think you're really doing yourself any favors with that argument, because I'm sure of the, let's call it 10 million unique email addresses in there, there were like 9.9 million unique people. Like, it's going to be very, very close. I don't think there's that many instances of people using the same service with multiple different email addresses. So, yeah. Anne says, have I been paying keycaps for the Windows Cube useful? I'm using a new keyboard. Last week, I was ranting about the amount of shit immediately around me on my desk that was breaking or not working in one way or the other. And one of them was the keyboard. Now, that keyboard ended up in the rubbish bin. I'm now using a Logitech. So I got one of these Logitech ergonomic keyboards, which goes well with the Logitech MX, whatever it is, mouse. And I really like this. This is a really, really nice keyboard. And frankly, this and the mouse are much better than the Microsoft Surface ones that I was using for ages. When I say ages, like, I don't know, 5 years, something like that. So very happy with that. But I thought about the keycap mentioned there. These are not replaceable keycaps. But it's one of these ones where they're like hedging their bets between Windows and Mac, where there's an Option/Start key and a Command/Alt key. And that's the only thing that bugs me with this. Like, why can't you just create like a Mac version and a PC version and then just give me the little Windows symbol? I'd be happy with that. I did manage to clean up a bunch of the stuff that I was showing in the live stream last week. Looking around me, there are less cameras lying around because I took some of the brand newies that Ubiquiti sent, put them in places I had other ones. I took those other ones out, and I found a spare UNVR, the network video recorder, and set up cameras at my parents' place. So now they have security cameras, which they've inherited from me, and I have less stuff sitting around on my floor. There are no Shelleys sitting around. There's still the remnants of all the work that we have been doing, a screwdriver and tape measure, but none of the Shelleys are sitting there, which excites me way more than what it probably should, because the Shelleys are either in the wall or sitting in the drawer of spares. Where were we? Allianz. So, 2.8 million sensitive yes, doesn't really meet the definition of sensitive, though. I don't like the way that term gets used. There are legal definitions for sensitive data, religion, sexuality, politics. Your email address, your home address, your phone number, yes, they should be handled with care, but they do not meet the definition of sensitive by any reasonable measure. Because if you go down that route and you go, well, all that stuff's sensitive, what's left? Like, what's not sensitive at all by that rationale? Tate says, congrats on 900 breaches. Yeah, I think we're actually at 901 now, aren't we? What does the front page say? Yeah, 901. I think it's congrats. I don't know, man. That's it's a milestone. I'll give it that much. Anyway, Allianz. On July 16, 2025, a malicious threat actor, not a nice one, a malicious one, gained access to a third-party cloud-based CRM. This is one of the other things that bugs me. We all know it's Salesforce, but so many times you see an organization saying, we've had a breach of a third-party service. Your data has been disclosed in there. And you're like, all right, well, which one is it? Because we all use so many third-party services. We use a lot of third-party services for have I been pwned. I mean, everything from Stripe for payment to SendGrid for sending emails to Zendesk for support. And I guarantee if any single one of those gets popped, I'm going to tell you exactly what it was. So why the... Anyway, the threat actor was able to obtain personal identifiable data related to the majority of Allianz Life's customers, financial professionals, and select Allianz Life employees using a social engineering technique. Would be great to see more detail of that too, wouldn't it? How exactly did you do that? It is fascinating watching the conversations between some of these folks. And when I say some of these folks, the threat actors, to use that term, what do they say? Malicious actors. The malicious threat actors. Watching some of the conversations with the malicious threat actors on Telegram channels and the amount of like bravado and chest beating and deliberate, insightful or inciting of anger and I was going to say hateful comments, but I find that's a really subjective term. Deliberately inflammatory comments, let's do that. And it's just, again, it's like it's either kids or very young adults sitting behind a keyboard somewhere. A bunch of these folks will be picked up by law enforcement agents at some point in time. And just to add to this as well, I'm going to talk more about this later in this year due to another upcoming trip and talk. But for the most part, the folks behind this are kids that have just started to go down a bit of a wrong path. Now, how far down the path they've gone is another question, but they've started out curious, often, as the term is, neurodiverse, having a little bit more trouble making the right decisions about this newfound power that they have to break into things. And they start with little things. It'll be game cheats, and then it will be DDoSing opponents, and then it will be maybe really minor exchanging of data breaches or things like that. And before you know it, they're on this slippery slope where from the comfort of their own home, sitting in their parents' house, they're suddenly doing serious damage to companies with 156,000 employees. And they're the sorts of folks that go down the path. We see over and over and over again. It almost feels like only yesterday it was like, oh, it's all Anonymous and LulzSec and whoever else. And now it's the same folks over and over again. And just watching the discussions in these channels, like the language used, it is fascinating. Like when I show other people, they're just like, holy shit, who are these people? Well, could be your kids for all I know, mate. As Tate says, they need better mentorship. Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. It's what guidance do they have to make the right decisions? They will almost certainly be technically smarter than their parents, so they're probably not going to get it from there. And their teachers, I was going to say, I've seen some of my kids. I think one or two of them are actually quite good at the moment, but I've definitely seen some of my kids' digital studies teachers, and I'm just like, you're just reading the textbook, aren't you, mate? And that's it. So they don't necessarily get that guidance from schools. Certainly, this is one of the regular discussions I'm having with law enforcement agencies as well. How do we prevent young offenders from becoming young offenders or going so far down that path they're going to make their life really hard for them, plus all the societal damage and everything else. These otherwise fairly innocent kids are ultimately engaged in action, say with the likes of Allianz here, that has real world impact on individuals. Once that data's out there and floating around, which it is now, that data will be used for phishing or further social engineering attacks or identity theft or all these sorts of things. And that's a real shame that that's what happens. But that is the industry that we're in too. Speaking of which, PayPal and the 16 million records it isn't. This is just another one of these things. It's like, how did this story get so much traction this week? Let me get back to the beginning. Where are we? It was on Twitter. I was commenting on this. As soon as I saw this headline, it's like, this is not what it is represented to be. Here we go. Hackmanic, back on 6 days ago from now. Cyber alert, PayPal, a threat actor using the alias Chucky_BF, BF being the acronym of the popular hacking forum that keeps getting taken down and phoenixed back up, and law enforcement must love that. Must love that website sitting there on the clear web with all of these people engaging in this activity. It's like, isn't this fantastic? Everybody just came to the one place and inevitably made all sorts of mistakes on their OPSEC, which could be lots of things. If you listen to this and you're one of those people that you have not even thought of. Anywho, claims to be selling 15.8 million email and plaintext password pairs linked to PayPal accounts worldwide. The authenticity of this claim is yet to be confirmed, but updating your credentials as a precaution is still a smart move. Well, let's have a look at the image in here. We've got Chucky from the horror movie Chucky. He's the avatar of the person who's decided to post this data. Their title is Global PayPal Credential Dump 2025, 15.8 million emails and plain text passwords. And this is sort of the headline that got the interest here. We'll come back to that in a moment. It's kind of interesting. Was it from here or somewhere else? Let's see if it was on this discussion. It might have been on this discussion. Somewhere there was some argy-bargy, as we'd say in Australia, some arguing backwards and forwards as to, maybe it was a different thread. Is this person the real threat actor with this particular name, or is it someone else? And then other people trying to impersonate this threat actor, and then there's bickering and infighting. And anyway, in this thread, I've taken this thread and said, given passwords definitely didn't come from PayPal in plain text, they've either been obtained another way, info stealer, credential stuffing, or there's another explanation for this claim. And obviously what I mean by that is it could be fabricated. Now, since that, and this it seems to be, that comment of mine seems to be what's been picked up in the press. Since that, we've seen a comment from PayPal saying this relates to an incident in 2022, which was related to credential stuffing. And just to be clear, what we mean by this is that someone is taking email address and password pairs from somewhere else, from another breach somewhere else, and then they're putting them into PayPal. I'm simplifying here. They're putting them into PayPal and, they work. And so every time it works, it's like, yep, we're going to move this from the great big list of credential stuffing things into the PayPal list. Now we have a list of PayPal people. Might even enrich it. You might even take those email addresses and map it to other data obtained from other places. And now this PayPal list is starting to look much more authentic. Now, I said here there's no way they've stored them in plain text. And people literally came back and how do you know it's not in plain text? It's fucking PayPal, mate. Like, there's no way PayPal stores passwords in plain text. It's just not happening. I think I said to one person in the thread, it's like, can you think of a single data breach of a large organization in the last decade with passwords in plain text? Even going back to 2012, Dropbox, LinkedIn. Dropbox had half of them in SHA-1. LinkedIn had them all in SHA-1. The other half of the Dropbox ones were bcrypt because they were rolling from SHA-1 to bcrypt. So 13 years ago, we were seeing stuff transitioning out of a weaker hashing algorithm to a stronger one. Still not plain text by any stretch of the imagination. Now, then you could argue, well, maybe they really did suffer a data breach and everything was like SHA-1 unsalted and it got cracked really quickly. It's not SHA-1, and it's not like it's going to be bcrypt or Argon 2 or script or something like what you would expect one of the largest online financial transaction companies in the world to use. So that's what it will be. So, going to be one of those things. I followed up with this after I got a little bit of traction and said, there's 4 options here, and I stand by these options. Number 1, the passwords are from info stealers. So someone could have got them from an info stealer. You could have infected machines. As they're logging onto PayPal, their credentials are captured. They end up in stealer logs, and that is a very valid possibility. Number 2, the result of credential stuffing. I'll just explain that one. Number 3, they obtained MageCart style. Now, I think this is very unlikely, but just to clarify what MageCart style would be. MageCart is I don't think it's even a clearly defined collective, but their TTP was that they would have compromised script on a page. Now, that could be they have found a vulnerability in the website. They've put script on there directly. It could be the way it was with the likes of British Airways and Ticketek, where they find a third-party dependency they can compromise, get script to run, listens for key presses or form submissions, and then as data is entered into the website, for example, PayPal, and of course you do type your password in plain text or fill it from your password manager in plain text, before it is submitted to the server, it's grabbed, it's taken off sideways, and becomes a great big list of credentials for that website. Very often seen this used to obtain credit cards. Could be that. I'm very certain it's not. The 4th one I think is entirely feasible. The anonymous criminal in the hacking forum is lying. and this is what it is. Like, this is a criminal act. Someone hiding behind the veil of anonymity. Someone who can just up and disappear. A journalist this morning was asking me some questions about an alleged breach, and I won't say which one just yet, but the organisation is denying it. And you've got someone who is ultimately, I think as I said to them, you've got an anonymous criminal making claims, and then you've got an organisation where very often they try to deny or downplay it. Who do you believe? I'll tell you who I believe. I believe the data. If the data comes out and that's floating around, I'll believe the data. I don't believe either of the other parties. I will verify the other parties. So if I see that. JF. Cheers, Troy from Miami. I have not been to Miami yet. I haven't been to Florida yet. I'll fix that sometime. I think it's probably a lot like here, this part of Australia. Al Tate says, PayPal for some reason limits you to small password length. Now, look, I saw a bunch of these other comments here where people are like, well, PayPal's password is shit because of arbitrary character restrictions or things like that. I don't like any of those restrictions. But I also wrote a post at some time about, when you see a bank and you see arbitrary password complexity criteria, or you see, 20 character limit on a password, or you see only SMS-based 2FA or something like that, that is not the only thing they do to authenticate you. Banks are not just doing string matching of your username and password. There are many other controls that are not visible to you behind that. And I remember at one point in time, sitting there at the CISO of one of our big banks in Australia at an event I was doing a talk at, and having this discussion. And he's like, yeah, there's so much stuff going on behind the scenes. I don't think the optics are good of having those sorts of arbitrary restrictions, but that does not make this account weaker than some Zendesk. What was I saying? Zendesk. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, let's say roll it yourself kind of forum that people stand up and you can have whatever password you want. Like, they're just incomparable. PayPal as well. PayPal has passkeys. So passkeys are a really, really nice way of augmenting your security there. So Altate, if you have not turned on passkeys on your PayPal account, do that. Aaron says online actions don't have consequences until they do. Yep. Yeah, and that's pretty fair because people go, I guess it's part of the problem. They start going down this path and they're yet to do anything which is going to have serious consequences. But then it's only one little hop to the next thing. And if you think about the IRL analogy, you don't have, let's say, you see the kids that end up on TV because they've stolen a car or something. They don't start by stealing a car. They start with something very small, and then it's a little bit more, and then it's a little bit more, and it just builds from there. And you're right, at some point it does have consequences. And at some point you're also no longer a child. And consequences differ significantly then. JS saw my tweet earlier this week and changed PayPal password just in case. I was thinking, no way, are they in plain text? So yeah, look, nothing bad happens if you change your PayPal password. Again, if you've got a password manager generated password, you've got your particularly passkey as a strong form of second factor, you're not going to have to worry. But yeah, nothing bad happens. Richard, do you still use SendGrid for Have I Been Pwned? Yes, I do. It's been a long week for us, moving clients away from it due to regular blacklisting, poor service. Their rep seems to be on the decline and others stepping up. Now, SendGrid, of course, is owned by Twilio, and it has been for a long time, so I guess that responsibility rolls back up to them. I've had many instances of ending up on lists via SendGrid. Now, to be clear, we've got a dedicated IP for SendGrid, so the only email coming from that IP is ours. What has tripped us up in the past is I've got a wall here that shows email delivery. And our email delivery is fairly constant, transactional email, because people are signing into their dashboard, they're signing up for notifications, they're doing domain verification, and it's kind of constant. And then every now and then we load a data breach and send 200,000 emails, and it just goes through the roof. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is you get various mail servers saying, well, now we're just getting like flooded with email from this account. It looks like spam. And you end up on a naughty list for 24 hours with a big email provider. And that's a real problem for us, because then when people are trying to sign into the dashboard and we can't deliver email, they're kind of stuck. I did have some discussions with one of the block list providers that gave me some interesting insight, and they were able to tweak a few things to help us out. I don't want to say exactly what it was because there's some black magic in the whole thing, but it is a hard thing to do. Definitely having your own IP address is a good step in the right direction, but of course that comes with a cost. But then it's just you that's accountable for that IP. Certainly every time I've gone and looked at the spam and reputation for Have I Been Pwned's outbound mail server and that IP, it's always come up, other than those little incidents, it's always come up very nice. So having that reputation, that positive reputation, is enormously important. But mate, I feel your pain if you're ending up on a naughty list there, because you're sort of like, well, what do I do? You basically just have to wait until it filters out of there. Okay, folks, I'm going to wrap it up. I do have to wrap it up a little bit earlier today. I have, for the last year, I've been teaching my son, who was 14 at the time, to drive, but you can't drive at 14 on the road, so we've been going to the racetrack. So we bought a car just to teach him to drive on the racetrack. Now he's going to be able to get his license in about 6 weeks from now, and this will probably be our last track day before he gets that. So today we need to spend a lot of time, ironically, probably not so much about how to handle the car at normal or high speeds, but like how to parallel park, stuff like that. So anyway, it's good fun. I'm going to go and head off and have a nice safe day on the track. Thanks, folks.